Welcome, everyone. Very excited to be back after a short break. Today, we're going to be talking about brand and positioning, particularly in the context of startups. And we're very lucky to have two great speakers with us today. We've got Leila Kashani, who is the founder and CEO of Alleyoop. The brand is her love letter to smart self-care, and every one of her category-changing products are designed to help women get time back for whatever matters to them. And we also have Karrie Sanderson here with us, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Typeform, leading all core marketing functions, including brand strategy, advertising, demand generation, product marketing, viral SEO, and the Typeform website, among some other things as well. So lots of context, experience, and value to share with all of you today on the topic of brand and positioning. So I want to push you all, if you have questions, please pop those into the Q&A section. You're welcome to kind of chat along with one another in the kind of under the chat for this particular session. And without further ado, let's get started with a softball question. Just kidding. Which is, why is brand important for startups to think about, particularly early on in their journey, right? I think I've had a lot of the conversations, I met a lot of startups that didn't think at all about brand until maybe, raising some money or what have you. And then it's a lot of work to kind of go backwards and do some of that. Why is it important for them to think about it, and how might they approach thinking about their brand at a very early stage? And maybe if Karrie, if you want to start off today, and then Leila, you can also share your perspective as well.
Yeah, I think whether or not you know it, whatever you're doing, you're building your brand. Everything you do, from the first way, the decisions you make about the product, the design, what you're offering, whether you call it brand or not, you are doing that, because brand is just what people think of you and what they say about you when you're not in the room. So if you're intentional about it and you think about, how do I want to show up? Where am I going for the long term on this? Both inside the product and outside the product, whatever you're building, how does that all connect across all the different channels? It's a lot easier to do it intentionally from the beginning than it is to, try to reverse engineer that in the end. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be, but really just thinking about the intentionality of how I want to show up from the very beginning, I think is why it's important. And either that or your customers will decide for you what your brand is.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think for the way that I think about brand is, it's your company's North Star. When you're thinking about making a decision, should I develop this or not? Does this make sense or not? Everything points back to that question, that mission statement, that your North Star, what the brand means to you. And then making decisions along the way become much, much easier. And that more cohesive your products and your messaging and everything is, you're really defining the brand, and your why becomes very easy for people to regurgitate back to you, because you've been so clear on defining it through your development of the brand.
And I think that I love that too, because there's a big part of, one of the hardest things to do when you're starting something up is deciding what not to do, especially if you're in that mode of, I'm building and I'm trying to finance this thing as I go along, and oh, there's that cool opportunity over there. It's tempting, but if you have that intentionality in your head and you've written down that North Star or why, as you said, Leila, it makes it a lot easier to decide what not to do, so you can focus on the thing that you started in the first place and why you decided to do that in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I think, brand oftentimes for startup founders, particularly if they don't come necessarily from a marketing background, maybe they come from an engineering background or product background, can sometimes feel a little ephemeral, right? It can be a little gray. It's kind of hard to understand what brand, like what is a brand anyways? Like what am I trying to define? What decisions am I making? Do you have any maybe questions that you start off trying to ask yourself to help get the process going with defining what the brand is? Like when someone asks a founder, what is your brand? Like what types of questions should they have answers for?
Go for it, Leila.
Either one of you.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think there's a clear difference in my mind of what you're solving as a problem, which is not just, that doesn't stand alone as your brand. There's a problem and solution which every company should have. That's how you have a problem that you want to solve, and that you're creating some kind of service product, efficiency to be able to provide that for this problem. Now that is just creating a company in my mind. Creating a brand is having a mission, is having a why. And that is like what wakes you up in the morning, what gets you excited about it, why, what are you actually trying to change and do differently? And so knowing that is very different than talking about your problem, because you can sit here all day and I can say, oh, there's too many beauty products, and oh, there's a lack of efficiency in the space, and those are all problems that I'm working to solve. What I'm really trying to solve is like moving the world forward, giving people their time back. That's like a bigger mission, and that is almost so big that it's unattainable. And that's when you really build a brand. And I think if you look at companies that have made history, think different, right? We all know who that is. They're not talking about like making your phone more efficient or making technology, easy in the palm of your hands. It's not that. It's much bigger. Think different. It stands alone, but it means so much more to you, and it kind of halos into the problem and the solution.
Yeah, I also think there's if you're a startup or a founder and you're thinking like but how do I articulate that? A lot of that can be found in your origin story. Like, why did you decide to do this in the first place? If you were, when you were thinking about the idea, like what inspired you, what unmet need was out there that you were trying to solve, and why? Like, what's going to be different about your customer's experience in the end, and not just the product and features. It's like the origin story is something that you can find a lot of inspiration for in that brand, and how it's has nothing to do with exactly how you built it. It's the why you built it that will come from. To your point, it's not the thing, it's the why, it's the purpose, and really thinking through. To me, the other piece is, who is this for, and who is this not for, right? Like really getting clear on that will also help you as you think about your brand articulation, because then you're like, well, what do those people care about, and how am I going to present to them in a way that they're going to want this, right? So it's I think there's a lot of the why there that you can dig into if you're trying to articulate what your brand is and be intentional about it.
Yeah,
so
on a meaningful level, what the brand means. Totally, I totally agree with that. I think that like knowing your mission state, your reason as to why, your story, your origin story, and picking that apart and figuring out what the meaningful thing that happened in that situation. And one of the things that is really interesting, and Karrie, why I'm so excited to share the panel with you, is when I first started Alleyoop, I had this idea of why I was doing it, but I wasn't sure if the world wanted what I had to offer. And so, we had a small following of an email list of about like 10,000 people who were interested in the cool products we were making. And I was like, well, as this brand develops into what it's going to make next, and really honing in on this mission and making sure it's what everybody wants, I went to Typeform and I sent an email out to my 10,000 customers at the time. And I asked them a bunch of questions to make sure what I was putting out was being picked up and it was resonating. And there were some things that changed. Like one of my first products I made for mist spots and touch-ups for shaving, and the community was like, we don't want to use it for mist spots and touch-ups. We want to use it for everyday use. So I had to go back and re-engineer. And so your mission statement will evolve and get more clear as the company comes to market. And that's okay. It's a little scary, but sometimes, in my mind, what was efficient to me is not as efficient to everybody else. And how do I really take into consideration my customers and balance the development of my products and my mission based off of what people actually want.
I love that you said that. First of all, I didn't realize that you were a customer, so thank you. First of all, I love that. And the other piece I was going to say is, and you're not, sometimes I think folks that are in that founder entrepreneur mindset, they're so used to doing everything themselves. Don't forget about the customer you're building for. Ask them questions, let them come along in the journey with you and test it with them and test it out, some at dinner parties but again, that's why you have to know who you're for, because then you can ask those people, what do they want? Am I getting off track? Am I on the right track? Help me do this. It's that input is such a gift, no matter what stage you're at in your business, whether you're just getting started or you've been around for a long time. You should always be looking for that signal and giving them a way to give you that feedback, and then really thinking about it and how that either strengthens areas that are working or gives you a chance to tweak what you may need to do differently with your product, your messaging, any part of that out there that will help you continue to grow and thrive.
It can sometimes be challenging to kind of sift through feedback and response and surveys to kind of find the signal through the noise. How do you think about either what are some specific questions that you think are very high signal that you would consistently ask your people who are either aware of your brand or are customers of your brand? How do you think about that, about parsing that out and kind of making sure that the details that you're paying attention to are ones that you really want to pay attention to?
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I think it obviously depends, first of all, how you ask, which I would say that because that Typeform is built around that. That was the disruptive insight that our founders had around that kind of wall, one-way form experience. That there's a different way that you can do this to make it more human and bring humanity to the digital world. So how you ask matters, and we know that ourselves. But then think about specifically what you're asking about. So it depends upon where you are in your journey. If you're trying to figure out why did a customer buy from you, like ask them, like, how did you find us? Don't just assume it was some last touch conversion on your website. They may have heard about you through social along the way. Or if you've delivered a piece of content or something educational and cool to them, take a minute to ask them, like, what did you think? What did you expect? Did this give you all the answers you were looking for? What's left unanswered? Just be really curious, to borrow from Ted Lasso. Just be curious, right? And at different points along the journey, as you're building your business, you're gonna have different things that you're gonna need to be focusing on building on and get them right along the way and connect them. And you're gonna ask different questions depending upon where you are and where your customer is in that process. I think your current customers are going to tell you something very different than the folks that you're trying to tell your story to and get as customers.
Yeah, I think we ask, so like we have a community of now 300 plus people that we talk to every day about a product that we're trying to develop and what they think. And I remember early on having to get really, really good at asking questions in a way that I wasn't guiding the answer, leaving it really open-ended and letting them kind of come back to me. But always, when you are thinking about the question, think about, are you prompting an answer that's going to be what you think it is? And if so, then you're not asking the right question, because you want to let them kind of guide you. That's the point of the question. So I remember in the very early days, I was trying to find out what brands people were using in my space. Like, how can I ask them this? If I ask them this, they're going to tell me the brands that they're most proud of to show off to the other people in the chat. So I can't ask them directly. Instead, I'm going to ask them to send me a picture of their favorite eyeshadow palette. And the intention was to find out the brand. But when I started getting pictures of the eyeshadow palettes, they weren't showing me the brand, actually. They were opening them up and showing me the inside. And what I saw in that moment completely changed the next product that we developed. I realized that people were not touching more than 1 to 2 colors in these like huge eyeshadow palettes. And I was blown away about how much waste was happening by that. And that shocked me more. I forgot about my question about what brands they were using. I decided to develop eyeshadow sticks that eliminated all that waste. And I used the colors that they were touching pan on, getting to the end of, to develop those colors. So having your questions kind of be open-ended many times will help guide in, like, creativity or a new direction or more insight that adds more value than you can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. That, and pay attention. And when you get those things back, it's easy to look and say, okay, this confirms what I thought. But to your point, pay attention to the outliers, pay attention to the signal that's coming from some of the other ones. There's an important signal there to either decide to do something about or not. But I agree. I think that's right. Like, be as open-ended, try not to lead the witness a little bit if you can. And then just, thank people for their feedback, right? They want to know that even if you don't use it, that's closing that loop. And then going back and saying, I listened to you, this is what we did differently. Like, it's a conversation. It's an ongoing conversation. If you look at your customers as humans, right, who are there and want to have a conversation, they want to become vested. They're looking for someone and a company and a brand to have a relationship with. It's so hard to build these days that when you do it well, you will stand out. So closing that loop, when you ask the question, even if you don't take their feedback, thank them for that, however that looks. It takes a moment, but it leaves such a strong impression that they'll come back if they're not right for you right then, when they are.
I'd also like to add that I think the biggest regret that I have about starting my business, the most expensive mistake I ever made, was asking just friends and family. Because they'll be nice, they'll tell you what you want to hear, or, there's so much more information out there from people who are not friends and family. Even they were testing my products and they would only tell me what they loved, never told me what they hated. Going a circle or two or three out, using Reddit, using other programs to get people if you don't have people. People love to give feedback, and the further out they are, the more honest they'll be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So on the path for a startup, as they're developing their brand, they're kind of figuring out their why, they're getting this feedback to help kind of guide them. At what point do you think it makes sense for them to, formalize the brand? Maybe bring in an agency or a consultant to help with a brand deck and kind of start to put a little bit more pen to paper, or doing it internally. What's the right stage to start to lock some of these things in?
I'll let you answer that, Leila. I'll start because
okay.
I'll explain why in a minute.
So for us, what we initially launched a brand under a different brand, and we got sidetracked by a really shiny retailer who loved one of my products and wanted to take everything in store. And having my background be in brand building, it was a really hard decision. Like, do I tell them no and focus on building the brand, or do I lead with product first? I made the mistake and led with product first because it was a shiny object of a retailer. And then I had to go back and spend time afterwards fixing the brand and really developing a brand that told the bigger story. And so what I would say is definitely do it once you figure out what your North Star is, once you figure out why you're doing it and your problem and your solution, you can get really clear on developing your brand name and your colors. Like for us with Alleyoop, if everything that I'm developing is meant for you to go and make, live a better life and be more efficient, and I want to make sure that you're getting back to the things that matter, then what is an Alleyoop? An Alleyoop is when someone throws you a ball and you score. I want you to score in life, right? So like the brand name felt perfectly into the space of what we were trying to achieve. But if I didn't have my why, my problem and solution figured out first, right, I would be working backwards. And when I launched with just the product first, it was like, okay, I developed this because I was solving just a problem. But on a higher level, there was so much more that I was doing, but I was so lost in the weeds of the product that the brand name had nothing to do with what the bigger mission was. And so if it's the product you're focusing on, you're not ready yet. If it's at a level of which you know what your overall goal is and what's going to come next on some level and what you want to achieve, that's when it's time to really bring in that branding agency or do it in-house. Like everything that you think of will help you determine which way to go. So even our brand color primary being red, right? I asked myself, if I want to change the beauty industry, what's the one color that's never been seen in the beauty space? Right? So like picking the color became so easy because I knew that I already had my why really clearly figured out. And so picking red was like against everyone's recommendation. But it was so outside of the space that it made so much sense. It was just an easy yes.
Yeah, I would agree there. Like going back to that, again, your question in some way, the way it's framed, like by formalizing the brand, of course you need to have your logo and you need to have your colors and all that kind of stuff. But to me, that's just an expression. It's one element of an expression of what happens when you have your brand determined. And then it's around consistency of application across all your channels, right? So I love the example that you gave. It's like if you don't know your why, then how are you going to determine how that's going to show up, whether that's your packaging, whether it's your messaging, how are you going to behave differently on social, all these different channels that you may have. How might you run an event if your brand is a certain way or not? Like those decisions will be by nature if you don't have that essence of who you are and why people, what is your why? You'll make decisions around shiny objects that don't connect. and they break trust. They don't build trust. Like people want to do business with people with brands they trust, and a huge part of trust building is consistency. You know, consistent. We as humans, we trust people that show up consistently in a consistent way with us, and that's true also for companies and brands. If you're consistent, the other thing I would say about brands is it's super easy to get bored with your own messaging because you're like, oh, we've been doing this for a year. Let's change it up. Like, don't do that because your customers are not bored because they are confronted every day with thousands of other brands and thousands of other decisions. And the more consistent you can be in what you say you're for, what you do for them, why you do it, how you show up with your tone of voice, with your experience that you give across all those channels, don't look at that as like a bad thing. That's a great thing from your customer's point of view. So if you're getting feedback from them, like this is where that feedback loop comes in. If you're off a little bit, they'll tell you. But if you're switching it up all the time, they'll be like, I have no idea what this brand stands for. I'm gonna look for something else. So it's so tempting because especially salespeople want to get really creative, like, ooh, something new and cool and different. It is. It's because they're bored. But that's the enemy of the brand is internal restlessness.
So,
Yeah.
no, I was gonna say I would actually love to double click on that consistency, right? You know, in startup land, it's the land of MVP and get to market and test and iterate and experiment. How do you balance the consistency on the brand with allowing for experimentation and testing and iterating and all of that? How do you try to marry those two, kind of what can seem like opposites?
I mean, to me, it's if you have that why defined, like the why you decided to build something in the first place, and you're getting that customer feedback, then hopefully you're iterating what you're doing based on that feedback, and you're saying like, oh, we heard you, we made this change, we rolled that back because you didn't like it, whatever that. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you know, just those ideas of when you've been consistent, when you've built that trust, when you've taken people's input, when you do make a misstep, they're more likely to forgive you. They're more likely to say, okay, got it. Thanks for being open and, you know, course correcting or, you know, that type of thing. But it gives you some room to explore within that umbrella. Now, of course, if you realize after a long time, you know, after a certain period of time that whatever you're trying to build is just, there's not that product market fit, then you may need to start over. That's a whole different conversation. But if you're pretty certain about what you're building, just that input, as we were talking about earlier, is so critical. As long as why you're making a change is based on what your market and your customers are telling you, and that it should not be an issue.
I think there's also a really clear difference between internal message and external message. So when you have your why, obviously you put that on your website, it's your North Star, it lives everywhere, it's important to you. But like as I think back to the pandemic, right? When that was happening, the way we marketed was everyone's decluttering. Here, make your vanity and everything more efficient, right? But before it was everything you need to travel light. So your messaging and your marketing are two different things. Your why stays the same, right? But your messaging can continue to evolve. Your marketing messaging continue to evolve with what's happening and all of that. So it's just another layer of communication. It doesn't mean anything's changing along the way, but what you might be saying to get your messaging out, your why out, might not resonate, and that you can continue to evolve based off of times, based off of market fit trends, how people are understanding that information, and that might continue to change a lot more often than you want. Even every email might be different, but the root of it is back to your why.
Yeah, your why and your messaging positioning, that you're right, that should stay. But but that's not copy.
Yeah, right.
That's not effective ad or marketing copy. That's a whole different thing. But it informs it so that you show up as the same, each time in terms of who you are underneath. Yeah, it's a great point.
How do you think about because I think there's quite a bit of nuance and differences between brand and positioning. How do you think of those two and what they mean to you and how you think about them?
you want Karrie? I'll go
Go
on
for
this
it.
one. So for me, the positioning is the who, the what, the where, the how, not the why. It's all those other things. Who's the customer? What are we providing? For like it's everyone looking for efficiency. It's for the non-beauty experts. These are all things that don't live in my why. It's for creating efficiency and multifunctional. It's to cut down the clutter. It's to go against what traditional brands are doing. It's to simplify your routine. It's for this demographic. It's for this, you're getting really specific with your positioning. With your why, it's very much your unattainable, right? It's not going to lead your marketing direction and who you target on Facebook and who you target on Instagram. It's gonna just be the overarching halo, how you're trying to change the world per se. And that is the difference. Your positioning is more tactical. It kind of guides your direction on product development, marketing, and all of that, which your mission will do too, but your mission lives a little further away and it's a little bit more of like a magic trick, something that you might never see again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I like the way that you frame that. Like for us, our brand promise is bring people in, right? Like it's kind of like no matter where Typeform is literally designed to bring people in more closely in a digital conversation. But the positioning of that and how we articulate that to different audience, it changes depending upon the audience. Like if we're talking to somebody who's using it with employees, it's slightly different versus if we're talking to somebody who's using us for lead gen or for research. And there's like these layers, but in every case, like we know at our core, what Typeform does is bring people a little bit closer by we've designed it that way, right? To bring in and to invite that feedback and create that conversation. And so that doesn't change. That's the brand, the essence of the brand. But then, so everything we do, whether it's how somebody in customer service answers a call or how our website is flows, or how might we show up at an event, like inviting and it just informs, and it's kind of like this we have examples, this not that, how we show up. Then when you know who you're positioning against and who your target is, and we've been around for 10 years, we're a pretty big company, so we've got different target audiences. You can think about for each one of those what the value that your product brings. It's a little bit further away from startup, but having understanding that who you are and then bring people in was part of the origin story. So it's like, go back to that again, like why did the founders do that? It's like there's got to be a better way than this form that's like a one-way wall that who wants to answer this thing, and I'm never going to get quality information. And so it's it all ties together, and it seems hard, but don't try to do it yourself. Like let your customers inform you, not your friends and family, to your point, but let the people that you think your product is for, let them help you articulate it. Have them.
I think the mission also is to remember it never has to do with the product, right? So Alleyoop's mission is to assist you in making moves in your life. Assist you in making moves in your life. You see, it also ties back to the name Alleyoop. I always try to carry things through, but it has nothing to do make moves in your life and in the world. It has nothing to do with the product. I don't talk about it being beauty. I don't talk about it being efficient. It's just make moves in your life and in the world. The positioning really focuses on what it is that you're creating.
Yeah.
And who you're targeting. So that's where you get more specific.
Yeah. Yeah. Bring people in, right? Exactly. It doesn't say it's a form, right?
Yeah.
But it's a digital interaction layer, whatever you want to call it, forms. But yeah.
Something that I come across quite a bit when speaking with startups is this idea of like investing in brand, and should I invest more in brand? Should I not invest more in brand? And I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding perhaps of what that means, particularly how you've both been speaking about what brand is. It can be misconstrued with like awareness, investing in awareness versus direct response or performance or what have you. I'd love to maybe talk about, for a startup in particular, obviously there's a temptation to invest in things that generate revenue, right? It's very easy to want to play at the bottom of the funnel, capture demand, so on and so forth. How do you think about investing in things that can't necessarily be directly attributed tomorrow to returning ROI? How should startup founders be thinking about that awareness building, sometimes referred to as brand building?
I mean, for me, it's a matter of time horizon, right? Like at any given time, your target audience, whoever you're trying to get to, like what percentage of them are really ready to buy, right? So if you only invest in marketing activities that are going to hit people who are ready right now, they're kind of like, okay, I'm in the market to, buy makeup that is a two-sided, eye pencil or something, great. Or they're looking for that kind of thing, or looking for something different, you're going to get them. But to me, where brand plays a role, and again, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do a big ad campaign or something like that, but if you think about your marketing activities on different impact timeline dimensions and balance that for what you can do with your budget, I guess, it if you only optimize for short term, that will work for a while, but then you'll hit some diminishing returns because you haven't invested time in creating pent up demand for people who aren't quite ready for you yet. But when they are, you've planted an impression in their mind that says, you know what? I am ready for, I just finished my last eyeshadow palette and I'm ready to do something different. I heard something really cool about this brand Alleyoop. I'm going to try that. Right. So it's, but in order to do that, you have to show up well. You have to create those impressions, whether they're just name impressions or show up in places where people who care about that hang out with a provocative point of view, with your value, and not always be asking for the buy now, sign up now, and to know where that is, you got to ask people like, where do you hang out? Where do you find your information? That's that whole getting that feedback part. It's really a different series of time horizons, and you can get pretty far. Maybe I don't know. You can get some far on just those put a quarter in, get a dollar out type motions, but you won't grow. You'll hit a wall.
I would agree. I think that if you look at like Apple versus IBM, Samsung, you know, you're not going to buy a phone from IBM. You're going to buy anything that Apple brings out because they've created a brand. And I think there's a balance between the two, and the balance really is where how much you invest in brand and how much you invest in marketing and advertising and performance, really like the conversion. There's perfect moments for each. So the tighter your brand is, the higher the expectation is to have a voice at certain like life events and things that are happening in the world. There's for us during the pandemic, we made a funny video taking a mashup of all the things like everyone was posting of their how crazy it was to be home, working from home, and all these funny pieces of content. It was probably like a $1,200 investment to make this video because of the editing, but it was all existing content. But it helped us tell the story that one, let's find the humor in it, and two, we're here to assist you, and we know this is a hard time, and let's kind of go at it. We're in this together. And it wasn't a brand campaign. It didn't have Alleyoop all over it. It didn't tell a Nike story. You didn't get inspired by it, but it showed where we sat. It kind of showed our personality. And so I think that as you go through your marketing calendar, you really want to make sure that that's part of it, and it might be guided by what's happening in the world. But when someone lands on your site, if you are going to develop something like that, people buy into brands. There's so many different beauty brands, but what's my story that's different? And if I can tell it well, and I can get people to understand how I'm different, the more likely they're going to buy my eyeshadow stick versus somebody else's, or buy my brush versus someone else's, because I'm holding place in their mind because of my story, because of my why. And so it doesn't have to be such a scary investment. It kind of can just show up in your messaging and your images throughout the site, but not show up as much, in something so crazy like a brand campaign early on, and get really scrappy with it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that what was interesting about the example you gave is the more you've articulated or spent some time saying like who we are, who we're not, who we're for, that part of that defining that brand, or just writing it down and being intentional about it. What's our tone of voice? Do we show up with a sense of humor? Do we show up with a seriousness and a helpfulness? Or like what are those things are? Just doesn't have to be complicated. You can pressure test it with your customers. When opportunistic things come up, like the pandemic, and you're like, okay, how do I help my customers through this? It makes it a lot easier too to know what to do, and also to not make a misstep, right? If you're clear on here's how I show up. Here's how my audience expects me to show up. We've all seen brands that step into something that people are like, wait, why are they speaking up? And I bet you they wish they could take that back. You can be more opportunistic in an amplifying, safe, effective way if you've just taken the time to write down a few of those things about who you are, why you exist, and what you want to do for your customers. So my guess is that informed some of what you did there.
Right. Yeah.
Is that you've articulated that about your brand. Yeah.
And also knowing when to sit out. There will
Yes.
be times where it has nothing to do with you, right? Our campaign launched right on Mother's Day, so it was perfect timing for our audience. We have a huge population of working women, working mothers, things like that. I didn't do anything on Father's Day, like that. It helps define the direction once you get more clear on who your audience is and your messaging, and on where you step up and where you stay silent and maybe you don't know enough. And I would say that like a lot of people think, oh, well, maybe for me, brand won't matter as much because I'm in tech or I'm in this category, and people don't need to care. Like people don't care about brand, but if you think about, that's probably how IBM felt, right? And then Apple came out, and so every industry people will follow you more if they believe in your why. And so having it, even if you think you shouldn't, you're creating pots and pans, you're creating, underwear. It doesn't matter. That any category can use a brand identity.
Absolutely. And I think it also, whether you're B2B or B2C, it matters. I mean, there's a lot of conversation in the B2C world, like, oh, B2B world, should we be behaving more like brand? And like, yes, because at the end, it's a person and people make decisions with lots of factors, many of which are emotional and a connection. And have you made that connection with them? And so there's in the B2B world, it's just a little bit more complicated because especially in tech, you may have somebody who uses the software, you may have somebody who buys the software, approval, that kind of thing, like the chain of all that. And if they use your software customer facing to their customers, like that's the situation that we have at Typeform. But if you're thinking about those constituents and how your brand can show up across that whole network, you can do it. I mean, and it's just as important, if not more. Like think about all the software software products out there, right? There's just, we've seen that Martech chart that comes out like every year is like it doubles the number, and you can't even see the logos anymore. That's what you're fighting against if you're in tech or even in B2B of any kind, because there is and one way to stand out, you have to offer a good product. Brand cannot cover up a bad product. So that's the other thing too, right? Yeah. Like they can do so much, but then at some point you're going to break the trust if you don't deliver. But if you've got a good product and you feel like it's truly breakthrough, then in my opinion, is even more important to get the brand right, because that will propel you when you deliver on the promise that you're making. The word of mouth, the loyalty and retention that you'll have because you've delivered on the promise you've made with your brand and your marketing, your messaging, will create a flywheel of growth, frankly.
Mm-hmm. For startups that are going through the process right now of kind of building their brand or taking a look at their brand or what have you, how much of this work do you think can and should be internal versus, what might be some conditions where you think it's probably best to go to an agency or bring in a consultant or something like that? Very curious what your thoughts are on that.
If you bring in an agency, they definitely play a role, but do not abdicate say, here's a project, go work on it and come back, because you'll end up with some shiny things that'll seem cool, but when you try to pressure test them, you have to be an integral part of that process. So if you're trying to save time by doing it, you won't, because to get the most out of a good agency, of which there are many out there and I've partnered with throughout my whole career, it's going to take as much, if not more work. They're going to ask you really hard questions, and they're going to try to get to the core of the things that Leila and I have been talking about and pull that out of you if you haven't been able to do that. So it's worth the investment. Really check around and vet and make sure they're the right ones for you. Not just because just because somebody, Apple used them, that's cool, we have them. Make sure they're the right ones for you. They have experience in your industry, hopefully, or at least similar type things. But it won't save you won't save you time if it's done right. You'll have to invest in it. But if you don't have the internal capability or you feel like you want that partner, there's no reason not to do that, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd say that this is a tough question because it really matters on what you're good at. Where are your strengths in your team, and where are the holes that you can lean out for? Because if you have someone who's an incredible copywriter and loves to write and can tell the brand story really well, then that obviously there's no reason to go out. You'll understand it better than anybody else. But by the time you hire an agency and you get ready to do an agency or a freelancer or anyone else, there's stuff that's in a founder's mind that we can see things and say, oh yeah, that's totally not it. Like they didn't get it. But the more clear you get in putting all of the things that are in your head on what the brand means and defining it, your mission, your why, your positioning, all of that, once you do onboard a freelancer or an agency or even hire someone, it'll be easier for them to create images or create brand identity and all of that once you are really clear. And that stuff comes out of your head and onto some kind of a document that they can utilize as, their inspo. And then I'd say like you want to go to market with something you're proud of. When I went to market prior to really being proud of the brand just because of the retail shiny object, my excitement and my ambition and I felt like there was still so much work to do. So I didn't get out loud and out. I didn't hire as fast. I didn't do as many of the things as I could have done if I had done it earlier. So it doesn't have to be an agency. We use freelancers for our brand, and I think it looks like an agency. And you also can, if you look at the evolution of Nike, their brand identity continues to evolve. Their why stays the same. And you'll watch a Nike video and it looks the same, right? But the swoosh has gotten thicker or thinner. It has moved to orange to to white to different colors. Like they've evolved it with the times, and that's okay. You can bring in a bigger agency, start small, and continue to work up further into it. You might not need like a photography guideline in the beginning, but as you get to the place where you're running, you save that stuff for later. This is not. I want to just do the visual identity, and I'll come back to these added bonuses of photography guidelines and things like that would normally fit in visual, but might not be needed up front.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it can be intimidating if you do a search for like brand books and how do people do this. It's like, oh, I'm not ready for all that. It's okay. But I think as you and I talked about, like getting that why, that purpose, that doesn't have to do with the product. If you start there, then the rest of that will come as you need it, and you'll realize when you need it.
Yeah, a mood board is so much more than you like. I had a mood board for the longest time, and one of them was like what I want you to feel, and that's what I want it to look like, and this is what I want it to sound like, and it was all just mood. It wasn't actually created work, and that's what I would send to partners. Whether it was an agency or if it was a freelancer or it was a hire, it would be that until I got to a place where I could actually put my own images in there and my own copy in there and all the other things.
Yeah, and then you built your brand book along the way. Yeah.
Right.
So I want to kind of get into some of the questions that folks are asking here. So let me see if I can find any that might be interesting to ask y'all. So what is the difference in your mind between brand versus product marketing?
So for me, the brand marketing is more at the why, the purpose, the value, like how you stand out, right? We talked about earlier. So for us, it's about how do we show up in the world, letting people understand like what is different about Typeform. The fact that we are literally designed to bring a conversational feel to that digital experience so that you get a better customer relationship. The product marketing piece of it, at least in a company of the size of Typeform, is more about the how, right? It's they need to articulate like, okay, so what is the solution? What are the features associated with it that deliver on the promise of that solution, and what value might you get from that? The product marketing team it gets into more of the product specifics about delivering on that that brand, that value, that promise. Where the brand marketers are, it's the umbrella everyone needs to keep dry under, if you will, and then the individual products can fit well under there, and they need to connect, right? But at many cases, many companies start with a product marketer, right, first before they do brand, and that's fine as long as you are thinking about that umbrella of brand while they're doing the product marketing.
Yeah, I'd say like your mission statement feeds your mission, your why feeds into your brand, and your positioning feeds into your product marketing. Your positioning is your like I'm creating efficiency. It's multitasking. It's the benefits, the selling points, right? It's the very like if I'm going to run an ad, my ad is going to say, it's multifunctional, it's efficient, it's 5-in-1, it's everything you need to use on the go. But the brand piece of it is the more brand campaigny or the how it ends and how it starts. But really the selling points in between are the product marketing. You're literally, think about it, product marketing. You're marketing the product that you're selling, and the other one is your storytelling, right? The brand is more of the storytelling, the heartfelt side of it. It's the part that tugs at your emotion on some level. And then the product marketing is the stuff that really ties to the actual like the technology or the physical product and the selling points of that.
Perfect. Another great question here is, what are the KPIs that we can use to measure branding or the effects of your branding? And I might add something in there. What are some of the ways that you collect that data to begin with, let alone like not just what the KPIs are, what are ways that I can collect the data that will help inform, am I building a brand or not? Am I doing a good job at this or not?
Yeah.
This is an interesting one because brand is not something that's easy to measure. So I like to think that when people are, commenting on that brand moment that we did, kudosing it, picking up what we're putting out, saying it, repeating it back to us, like, gosh, this brand has created, made me get back to the things that matter, and it's created so much freedom in my life, and I've been able to do X, Y, and Z. Those moments of them saying what I'm trying to create back to me is moments of like wins. That's when I know our brand is being picked up, when people are storytelling our brand for us, when you're starting to create a following and a desire of people to join your community. They're joining for the brand, they're not joining for the products. And so it's more of an emotional measure.
Yeah, agreed. It's emotional, but I like what you said, because I've done this in the past where we've had, talk to customers and they tell the story and people will say, wow, it's like they read our messaging framework. I'm like, well, then we know we're doing a good job because it resonates with them. It's easily recalled and they come back with you like, this is why I use you. That's important. I think there's also just some leading indicators, like you said, around how much engagement are you getting in areas where you're deliberately showing up, how much sharing, that kind of thing. And then the other piece is you can ask, how did you find out about us? You can use a type form. Like, it's easy to just use the attribution that comes digitally, which is important. But, as the changing data privacy rules go, like, you should be asking folks open-ended, how did you find out about us? And you'll hear a lot of interesting signal as well that will be reinforcing about whether or not your brand efforts are effective, about where they heard about you. If it was a Google search, well, then good job on your demand gen. But if they're talking like social or recommendation, things like that, those are usually pretty good indicators of brand strength. And then if you get further out from a founder startup and you have the money to invest, there's ways you can actually do surveys among your target audience and see who can name you unaware, like without prompting, who can recall your brand with prompting. Those are some metrics that you're probably a ways in, but you can start to do that. It's an investment, and you can absolutely move the needle there. And that's kind of the stage that most of companies I've worked at are at.
Yeah, Karrie, I'd love to double click on that. Some of the folks in the audience are working at, companies that are further along and doing, bigger media investment and all that sort of thing. I remember one of the challenges that I had when I was working at ad agencies and trying to get more budget for awareness building activities versus, performance activities, there can be a bit of a struggle to get those dollars, right? And say, well, I'm getting this ROI on these performance things, I'm not, how do I know that I need to give you another $1 million for top funnel awareness? How do you have that conversation, right?
Yeah, to get really specific, especially most marketers have in their toolbox a pretty good, digital plays with traditional demand gen ads and things like that, search, and you can test it, find a market, either a country like US or even, MSAs within that. Look at what your baseline is on those metrics. When you run your advertising, you can see they will go up, right? Your effective spend on your typical demand gen. So that's one metric. So you can do it that way. You can do a test, run some air cover, awareness type things if you'd like, and then you will see a halo effect of those things, not just during that test, but after typically. That's one way to do it. On top of that, you can, a lot of the common platforms that people that you may be investing in do have where you can test your brand lift, your brand awareness, like within certain ads, like recall, like take advantage of those services for some of the common ad platforms to see. Start there, get those signals in these small tests, and then build. I mean, you're not going to go from 0 to 10 million, investment in brand, but there's ways to give you signal on how it can not only have its own impact for that longer time horizon that we were talking about around just short-term investment versus creating new buyers, but also the lift it will have on the rest of your motions, right? The other marketing investments will start to show some lift as well. It's not just attributed only to brand. There's a lot you can do there, and then you can also measure it in and of itself if you'd like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. No, thank you for diving in there. Karrie, Leila, thank you so much for your time and your insights and sharing with the audience. Karrie, if folks want to find you online and to get in contact or see what you're up to, where can people find you?
Yeah, so Karrie, I'm on LinkedIn. That's the best way to find me. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the CMO at Typeform, and appreciate the opportunity, Ian, and love the conversation, Leila.
Mm-hmm. And Leila, where can folks find you online as well?
I'm not answering LinkedIn emails. I have over 400, so don't LinkedIn message me if you get hold of me. But you could definitely get in touch with us through our social channels or through me directly. I'm at Leila Pela on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all the fun stuff. And then if you really want to get in touch with us through LinkedIn, do it through the brand, not through me.
Yeah, also true.
All right. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. It's been a great conversation on brand and positioning. Hope there's some value that you all can take away from this. Next up, we got a session on influencer marketing, and hope you all will stick around to check that out. Thank you everyone again.
Thank you.
Thank you.